the more interactive a screen use can be, probably the better for the child, because it is in real time learning to negotiate issues, not just content issues, but human issues in relationships. Be mindful in our use of screens. Be balanced in our use of screens and turning them off, and taking a walk or playing catch in the backyard or cooking a meal together. And the third and most important, particularly for parents, is be present. We as parents need to model the behavior with our devices that we want to see in our kids. Be the change you want to see. I think the most important thing here is to remain engaged with your child when they are learning the digital space. I think it's really a matter of actively parenting in the digital space. And when a new issue, whether it's a device or a platform or an application, is introduced, do it with them. Enjoy your media and use them wisely.
But thank you everyone for being here. My name is Kirsten. I'm part of the Lingokids team. And I'm so excited to talk to you today about screen time, because as a mom living in this crazy digital age, screen time is all around us. There's so many different options. It seems like kids just love screen time more than ever, but we as parents and caregivers want to protect our kids and give them safe, healthy options of screen time and know what's best for them and look out for things. And I think we just all have a lot of questions as this world kind of evolves digitally. And so we thought here at Lingokids, we wanted to bring in the best possible expert that we know about, that we follow, and that is Dr. Michael Rich. So today we're going to be going through all things screen time. He's here to give us his expertise, and I'm going to kick it over to him to give a quick background. And like I said in the beginning, if you guys have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. At the end, we'll hopefully get to a couple of them. So Dr. Rich, thank you so much for being here. Can you give us a little bit about you, your background, the Digital Wellness Center, and everything about you?
Well, everything. How much time do you have? Most importantly, I'm a parent of four. I am a pediatrician. I practice adolescent medicine, in specific at Boston Children's Hospital, which is Harvard Medical School's teaching hospital. And I am the founding director of something called the Digital Wellness Lab. And what the Digital Wellness Lab does is we do research, we do education and empowerment. We also treat kids who've gotten in trouble in some way or another in the digital space. And we're hoping to bring together all stakeholders in the digital ecosystem, from tech companies to entertainment companies to educators to healthcare providers, to work the issues we're having with screen time and with screens, and move us to a constantly better place. I've often said to Kirsten that this is and always will be a work in progress. We will not be able to perfect it ever, certainly not overnight, but we can always keep perfecting it and keep getting closer and closer to that as kids grow up, as the digital ecosystem evolves and changes, affecting that development and reflecting it in what they create on it. And finally, the change in all of our behavior, because we have smartphones in our pockets and live in smart houses with smartphones, with smart watches on our wrists. So anyway, I'm glad to be here. I apologize for the delay in getting connected, but we're here together now.
Yes, worth the wait. So I guess that leads to my first question. So over the summer, the team here at Lingokids, we did a study with close to 2,000 parents about screen time, their worries, their concerns, how their kids were using screens, how long they were spending on screens. So in our kind of study, which many of you tuning in may have helped us out with, we found that 55% of children between the ages of 2 and 8 were exposed to screens for about an hour to 3 hours a day. And we have some parents who are like, can I like keep screens away from my child completely? Like, can screens be avoidable, or is that just totally impossible in today's world?
Um, I think it's not only impossible because in virtually every space we're in, there's at least one, often many screens. They're in our pockets, they're on gas pumps and shopping carts. Um, and I'm not sure that it's desirable, actually. I mean, we have now a very rich and diverse digital ecosystem that has really saved our bacon during the year of learning remotely because of COVID. Um, it has become an important meeting place for people around the world. It is where kids learn and where adults work. So I think that rather than avoiding screens, what we need to do is master them and to use these intensely powerful tools for what they do well, and to put them down and do other things when they're not the best tool for the job. Because when you're with your child, uh, you want to be with your child. You want to be present. And one of the things I've been known to say is that instead of creating killer apps, which everybody wanted to do, we should be developing our killer bees. And those killer bees are be mindful in our use of screens, be balanced in our use of screens and turning them off and taking a walk or playing catch in the backyard or cooking a meal together. And the third and most important, particularly for parents, is be present. Don't be staring at your phone while you're yelling at your kid to turn off the video game.
Yes, I think as parents, we've all done that, and we probably use screens more than our kids. So I guess um, as parents, as caregivers, like how would you suggest we have healthier screen time habits that will be a good example for our kids?
My
Oh,
assi- my assistant has appeared.
Eddie
Um,
Cat, the star of the
he
show.
likes to lie on me while I see patients in telehealth. And so he thinks you're a patient. Um, You'll have to repeat the question now because
No, I mean, we could talk about the cat all day, but um, in terms of parents and caregivers, like we use screens, all of us probably more than we want to, more than we should. How can we be a good example? What are some tips for us to be a good example around our kids so they aren't addicted to their screens like we sometimes might be, unfortunately?
um, well, I will first of all say I don't think that addiction is a good model for what's going on. That's, we treat a lot of kids whose parents bring them and say he's addicted to video games or she's addicted to social media. If you think of addiction as use of a pleasurable but unnecessary resource that you continue to use and usually advance the use of despite negative consequences, that actually causes a physiologic change both when you are using and withdrawing. When we approach that scenario as clinicians, our therapeutic goal is abstinence. Stop the alcohol, stop the opioids, stop the cannabis. Um, this is a very different thing. We need to be using and be very good at using interactive media in order to do virtually every aspect of life now. Um, so this is overuse of a necessary resource that continues despite negative consequences. And our goal here is self-regulation, not abstinence. And so we see this as more akin to binge eating disorder. That's overuse for psychological reasons to soothe yourself, to distract yourself, but you don't stop eating, and we can't stop using interactive media. So, to answer the question, the original question, I think that we as parents need to model the behavior with our devices that we want to see in our kids. Be the change you want to see, um, and because they are looking to us for guidance. They hear about 1% of what we say and 100% of what we do. So when you're with your parents, put the phone down, turn off the laptop, go for a walk or play catch in the backyard. Make memories with him or her because you know what? They're not going to be this old forever. And let's treasure these moments with the kids.
Yes, definitely. And our community here at Lingokids, we're parents of kids around 3 to 8. So these years go fast and the days are long. So I think that's some great advice for all of us to remember. In terms of, since kids are on screens, it's unavoidable at this point. What are some tips on how to find quality types of screen time for kids, whether it's an app, on TV, whatever it is? What is kind of, I know you could talk for days about that, but what's kind of your high level advice?
Well, high level advice is when introducing any device, any platform, any application, any, for example, broadcast, is start doing it with your child. Sit beside her or him when you are going online and teach him or her, and also learn from him or her, because you know what, there are going to be things that they know how to do that we don't. Clearly my kid is better at Instagram than I am, so I'm actually logging in on his account right now. So I think that one of the things, after modeling the behavior we want to see, is mentor them with this behavior. Sit down with them and see what you think of the content, but also watch them and listen to them and talk with them about how they feel about the content. One size does not fit all. There are obvious great things out there like Lingokids, of course, but like Sesame Street. But there's a lot of stuff out there that will work well with certain kids and not with other kids. So I think the most important thing here is to remain engaged with your child when they are learning the digital space. Use it as part of what you experience together, instead of putting a screen in front of them and hoping that'll keep them quiet so you can get dinner on the table.
Right. So can you go into a little bit more about passive and active screen time and the differences there and kind of what you recommend?
Absolutely. Well, passive screen time is largely much like old-fashioned watching TV was. It's going on Netflix and watching a series or a movie. Um, it does not require any input from the user or the viewer. Active is interaction with that screen. So interaction with another gamer somewhere in the world, interaction with someone on social media, and interaction such as we're doing right now. So I think that the way to think about this is, what is the purpose of this? What is the task you're performing here? You can watch Netflix and learn a movie or learn history, watch a documentary, something of that nature. And so passive use is not entirely bad, but it really is a one-way learning experience. Interactive media, interactive use of the screen is actually richer for learning, because you are getting feedback, whether it's from an algorithm in the computer or whether it's from another person. You are learning how to interact and how to converse, how to think things through with each other, how to argue, how to resolve arguments. So if you think about it, that the more interactive a screen use can be, probably the better for the child, because it is in real time learning to negotiate issues, not just content issues, but human issues in relationships.
That's really helpful to know. And how does, I guess, educational screen time fit into that? Because obviously on our side, we cover a lot of educational topics, other apps and programs do as well. So what are your thoughts on kind of using that as a tool after school or to prepare kids for preschool, kindergarten, beyond?
Absolutely. There's some wonderful software and programs and content online that is designed to be educational. I will offer one caveat that they are not all high quality. They are not all based on evidence and on educational science. And so that is where you're sitting beside your child, watching her or him, seeing whether they are learning and what they are learning from it. So have a dialogue about what you just screened and think it through, and you'll get a pretty good sense of whether they're actually learning something or whether they're just distracting themselves with entertainment.
Yep. And I think in terms of entertainment, I know at the Digital Wellness Lab, you guys work with pretty much every major entertainment media company around the world to kind of help them with best practices. So as kids are on things like YouTube or TikTok, like what are some best practices that you can kind of help parents with that they can instill in their children when they're using these apps that may have older content available on them?
Well, I think that from the beginning, use of any screen should be a shared experience between parent and child so that that mentorship can happen. Um, I think we've developed bad habits of assuming if we can find something that we know is good, we can plunk our kid down on the couch with a tablet
Mhm.
or in front of a television and walk away and do other things. You can do that eventually, but only when you really understand what that content is, how it's delivered, and how your child is responding to it. Because what may be educational for one child may terrify another or confuse a third. And so I think the most important thing here is to share the digital space. We should be parenting our kids in the digital space as we parent them in physical space, in the sense that they are spending at least half of their time that they're awake in the digital space. And we need to be present for them as parents, as guides, and frankly, as um, fellow audience members or fellow players in that digital space, so that it becomes part of the familial experience of the family together spending time.
That's great to know because when we did our study, only about 50% of parents were actively involved in their kids' screen time. So it sounds like it needs to be up to 100, and all of us need to be very actively involved, mentoring them and partnering with them on this.
And enjoying them, right? I mean, let's
Yep.
not use these screens as electronic babysitters so we can walk away. We had these kids for a reason because they are special, unique beings that we wanted to meet and get to know and find the joy of watching them grow up and get smarter than we are.
Definitely. That is the goal. I think that's, yeah, really great advice for us to remember because I think it can be easy for all of us. Yeah, like you said, if you're cooking dinner to be like, here, like watch this show or here's the tablet. But I think, yeah, it can be a really fun opportunity to engage with our kids, see what they're excited about, what they, yeah, light up over, or what songs they sing. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to be together.
And
Um,
do the same thing with making dinner. Even when they're very young, as soon as my kids could sit up, I would put a metal bowl and a wooden spoon and some flour in that bowl, and they would make a huge mess. But they now today, they're two teenage boys that can cook, right, and like to
wow.
cook. And I told them, you're going to have so many girlfriends because you know how to cook. Because most
Yeah,
guys are clueless about this, and that'll really impress them. But what it was shared time. We learned to enjoy making food together. We learned to enjoy consuming that food together and interacting with each other. And frankly, a one of the most powerful things you can do to preserve your child's, not just your child's nutrition, but your child's mental health, is to have a sit down family meal without devices once a day. So sit down together at the end of the day and have a meal. And the devices distract from what really is going on here, which is you're catching up with each other. You're downloading your experiences in the day. It's your chance to understand what's going on with each other and help each other process whatever tasks they're involved with. And
hmm
um, you'll find some really remarkable people sitting across the table from you.
yeah. I think that's one thing that you and I connected on initially when we spoke a long time ago is that we see screens now at restaurants and at dinner tables because parents want a moment of peace. But how would you recommend that? I guess parent or kids who are used to maybe having a screen on during mealtime, and parents are like, I want to break that habit, but it's so hard because the kid gets upset, or it's just kind of a habit at this point. How do you recommend that families kind of move screen time to a different part of the day, and maybe not during that mealtime?
Absolutely, and not during sleep time either. No screens in the bedrooms is important. Um, Look, kids will get upset. There's no question about it, particularly if they've been habituated, been trained to say that when I eat, I have a television in front of me or a tablet. Um, the easiest way to do it is rip off the Band-Aid. Just stop it. And yes, they will flip out. And day two, they will flip out, but a little less. Day three, they'll flip out, but a little less. By day four, they've forgotten about it, right? Um, I don't think there is, and don't let your kids blackmail you. Don't let your kids say, I won't eat my vegetables unless you bring the screen back. Um, they will eventually eat their vegetables. You don't need to panic. Um, and part of what you're doing as you sit down is you're modeling eating in healthy ways as
Mhm.
well, and doing mentally healthy things like having a conversation and not saying, you know, how was your day? Fine. What'd you do? Nothing. Um, Push beyond that, and you know a little bit about their school, you know a little bit about the community. You can ask pointed questions that get them going. And when they get used to having a conversation, um, they won't miss the screen.
All right, so I think that's the challenge for everyone listening in on this is, yeah, make those moves if we have our screens with our kid during mealtime. I think that's some great advice. One question I had for you as we're discovering apps or television shows or some sort of media content that our kids are interested in, their friends are watching. We see they see the app and they're like, oh, I want to download that. How can we as parents assess that? What do we need to look for in terms of the in-game content or ads or everything like that? Like what can we do as parents as we're assessing these kind of options for our kids?
Well, the request will usually be from the kid, whose friend turned them on to this game when they were, at their house or whatever.
Right.
Um, and I think the response is to be open-minded and curious and sit down next to her or him and have them show you the game and have them show you how they behave with the game. So because playing these games does change us in various ways. Um, so again, to make this a shared experience rather than when you're 9 years old, you'll be old enough to have Call of Duty or whatever. Um,
Right.
it's more of how do we match our child to the media that are available to them, and all 9-year-olds are not alike. All 13-year-olds are not alike. And so we don't really talk about age appropriate screens or age appropriate media. We talk about what is developmentally optimal for this child. And, one 5-year-old is not interested in reading yet, another one is reading chapter books. Um, Play to their strengths, play to their interests, and watch them to see exactly how they're responding to this material. If they're playing a violent game and they come off and are all aggressive with their siblings, maybe that's not a good game for them. Um, but if they're
Mhm.
playing another game and they bring their siblings in and play with them, and make it a social event, they will benefit from that as well. So I think it's really a matter of actively parenting in the digital space. And when a new issue, whether it's a device or a platform or an application, is introduced, um, do it with them. One of the things that I argue with the tech companies about all the time is I want them to remove parental controls, not because
Really?
parental controls are a bad thing, but because there's no child on the face of this earth who wants to be controlled by their parents. What they should have,
Very true.
and some of it is the same thing, is parental engagement tools. tools that draw the parent into the child's digital experience and keep the parent involved and make it clear that this is a shared experience. This is not a solo experience where the kid goes down the rabbit holes of the internet for 5 hours and never talks.
Right. What are some conversation starters, I guess, if they're playing a game next to you or watching a show? Like, what are some good questions to ask? Like you brought up, like, what'd you do at school? Like that question is always nothing. So what are some questions we can ask to really engage with our kids?
Well, if they're sitting there playing a game, ask them about the game. Be curious. I don't think there's a parent in the world that understands all the ins and outs of these games. So that gives them it's an interesting thing you're doing there, which is you're saying, I love you, I respect you, I am curious about what engages you. I'm not being judgmental. I'm not saying right or wrong, good or bad, but I want to learn, and it may be that they're playing Grand Theft Auto, and you want to sit down next to it and start playing it with them. And yes, they will be better at it than you are, but instead of just saying that's awful, stop doing that. You can figure out finally how to steal a car with the 47 different moves with thumbs you never knew you had. And then when you turn to your child and say, okay, now I understand how to do this, let's talk a little bit about why you might want to rehearse that over and over and over again. And you're coming from a very different place. You're not wagging a finger at them. You are saying, I'm interested in you. I want to see what you're interested in, and I want to share that with you. But I also want to give you some wisdom of the ages, if you will, from someone who's experienced something that, wouldn't it be more fun, or at least as fun, to play FIFA soccer as to play Grand Theft Auto?
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's some great advice. And I know we have a few minutes left, but I really wanted to get into kind of the work you're doing with the Digital Wellness Lab. I think you guys are doing some amazing things. And you and I were talking earlier about the pledges that you've created. So I would love to just hear, what is the latest in the digital wellness space? What can parents look out for? I mean, everyone needs to follow the Digital Wellness Lab Instagram and follow you online, but would love to hear from you. What's the latest?
Well, one thing I would offer to all the parents online is we have something called the Family Digital Wellness Guide. It's on our website, digitalwellnesslab.org, that follows human development from birth through infancy, through childhood, through adolescence, right to young adulthood, and looks at the interface of screens with those developmental stages and tasks. It talks about the ways that screens can help, but it also talks about the things to be aware of and to be careful of, that they can get in the way of healthy development. So our goal is really to help parents, families, and ultimately kids, of course, to use screens in a way that help them be healthier, smarter, and kinder to each other. So that's a key element, and you can enter that Family Digital Wellness Guide at whatever age your child is. I would also say read the next stage too, so you know how to anticipate what's coming next, and how you can prepare for it. We do a lot of research, including what we call pulse surveys. 3 or 4 times a year, we do a quick poll across the country of what's going on. Our most recent one looks at the different kinds of digital spaces in social media and how they affect people. And you were mentioning the pledge earlier. In June, we announced at the Cannes Film Festival something we call the Inspired Internet Pledge. And that is a pledge that we're asking tech companies, entertainment companies, and basically consumer product companies to think about their digital presence online, to tune that digital presence for the emotional wellness of those who are using it, to listen to those who are using that space and hearing ways in which they are falling into trouble or falling into harms, and respond to that, so that we are constantly tweaking and adjusting that space to move toward a healthier, kinder place for these users. And Thirdly, for the companies in specific, to share their information, share the things that help their kids, their users, be healthier, smarter, and kinder to each other. And then the final thing I should mention to you is I have a book coming out in February from HarperCollins. It's called The Mediatrician's Guide. I am known as the Mediatrician because I'm a pediatrician who specializes in media effects.
A great name.
And the subtitle is A Joyful Approach to Raising Healthy, Smart, Kind Kids in a Screen-Saturated World. So it's more than just what should screen time limits be. In fact, I think in this day and age, we can't really measure screen time, let alone have hard and fast rules about it. So it really is kind of a guidebook for your digital native. How are we affected by the screens we use and how we use them? What are some of the things to be concerned about, and how do we act on that? So it's broken into 3 sections of what, so what, and now what.
Well, I'm definitely going to pre-order that right after this call, because I think I definitely need that. I think it sounds like a very helpful guide, because I think as parents, we are so busy and overwhelmed that we need practical tips like you gave today, and guidance as this digital world is ever changing and it's so hard to catch up on, even for those of us that literally work in the digital space. So I think we are almost at time here, and I think I know the answer to this, Dr. Rich, but what is the one takeaway you want our Lingokids families to have from this webinar? What is, if they get off this Instagram Live, what do you want them to go do with their kids later today?
It's the way I sign off my advice column, Ask the Mediatrician. Enjoy your media and use them wisely.
To all you parents and caregivers, Lingokids is here for you. Our mission? To support you in your parenting journey and help you raise amazing kids. How? By offering you our top parenting tips, the latest in education news and trends, exciting updates about Lingokids, fresh seasonal content that your child will love, and a range of both online and offline activities that you can enjoy with your entire family. Be a part of our community of families from all around the world. For even more parenting advice and conversations, download the Lingokids app and explore our in-app parents community. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe to the Parenting Tips by Lingokids YouTube channel